Hey guys, and welcome to my world building vlog! Woo! So we're gonna be completing our two-parter on geography and weather today. My name is Erin and I am a writer. I am working on several fantasy stories right now, so I'm just going through some of the world building questions I've had to answer, working on my stuff, and putting them out there to you guys so you have the resources. It's not necessarily advice, it's more just things to consider as you're building your world. So geography and weather are a really good opportunity to build history into your world. When you consider it, the entire history of the planet has been so heavily influenced by the climate and the landscape that it would be really silly to not consider this in the world that you're making. So a lot of times when you're considering history, empires and whatnots have not necessarily expanded for glory, but for resources. If you are placing your people in a resource-poor area, they're going to be looking for food, they're going to be looking for water, and anything else that they can get their hands on, which is when you're going to get them into expansion. I think in history, a lot of things have been more impacted by the landscape and the weather than people would like. We have this little fantasy in our heads that humans are the ultimate controllers of our destiny, and all of these major events in history were from people deciding this is what we're going to do, but in reality, a lot of it was that they needed resources, and so they had to expand or migrate from where they were in order to survive. You can use the weather to really F things up in your world. You want to create a famine? That's going to cause a lot of conflict. It may even spur wars with neighboring nations because the people in your main country that your main character lives in can no longer feed themselves or have access to clean water. If you're going to have imperial expansion at any point, you're also going to want to consider landscape. So a good example of this was, say, the Mongol expansion, where you had these vast stretches of flat land that they could basically race down, surprise cities, and take them over before they had any chance to react. If you want to be able to move people quickly, you need to give them prairies or steppes, flat areas that they can get across. If you want to impede them, you can include mountains, forests, bog, rivers, literally anything to slow people down and make it difficult for them to get where they're going. Poor weather is probably going to be causing some food shortages. You can create massive famines with just a few weeks of drought or a day of really bad hail. Droughts have caused entire civilizations to up and collapse. Ultimately, it doesn't matter how long a culture has been there. If you take away their food and water, they're not going to survive. And this is a thing that you can incorporate into your story really easily. Maybe you have this ancient culture and all that's left are ruins. You can use that as an example. Like, maybe this is going to repeat itself in your story. Maybe there's already food shortages and your characters have to figure out how to survive, and maybe that means leaving. Basically, if you need a conflict that is not dependent on your characters, weather is a really good tool to create hardship. Your cultures are also going to be hugely dependent on where they live and what the climate is. It's going to affect their food, their travel, their clothing, a lot of times their religions. Basically, everything is dependent on where people live. You're also going to want to consider that most all cities or settlements are going to be on a water source. So if you're going to have them in the middle of nowhere, there has to be a way for them to survive. Most cities are going to be on the coast. The rest are probably going to be on a river route or within a very short distance of that, because otherwise people are just going to die in a matter of days if they can't drink. Your landscape is also going to influence how easily accessible other cultures are. Maybe they're stuck in the middle of the mountains and they are completely isolated from other groups. Maybe they have free trade and everyone is really easily accessible. You can also include things like storms and earthquakes that can destroy cultures overnight. Basically, anything that you want to do to punch your culture in the face, you can achieve with some sort of natural disaster. They are a really, really good tool if you want to make your character suffer without making other characters directly responsible for that suffering. You want them to have a really bad time? Throw a blizzard at them. No one has fun in a blizzard. The possibilities are literally endless, and you can use geography and weather to create huge roadblocks for your characters to overcome. This is going to come into a lot of the hero's journey, which is a very, very common fantasy trope. It's an archetype that has been around for thousands of years, and anytime your characters are trying to get from point A to point B, you can use the landscape to F all that up for them. A really good example of these in sort of the modern psyche are The Lord of the Rings, where Frodo has to get from the Shire to Mordor. He has to pass through a lot of stuff. And you can set that up. Some of it can be magical if you want, but even just the act of having to walk that distance to get over mountains, to get up to a volcano, is a lot of difficulty for your characters. Any story that you're writing where your characters are going anywhere or experiencing any type of weather is going to benefit from you having a good understanding of geography and climate. So set it up properly and figure out how it's going to inhibit your characters and enrich your story. So that is all I've got for you guys today and how your geography and weather can influence your plot. And I hope that was helpful. If you have any questions, feel free to hit me up on any of my social media. I will put all the links in the description. And I'll see you guys next week. Bye.